Good morning. Welcome to Learning to Learn a Language. We are with the third unit, right? And the second section of the third unit. That is, of course, the poetry section. And what do we have today with us? We have a brilliant poem, lines written in early spring by Wordsworth, William Wordsworth. As usual, the poem has got its warming up section about the author and the text followed by glossary and couple of assignments to improve your vocabulary, and also questions to check whether you have understood the poem properly, intensely, immensely also, and deeply. Before we get into the poem, that is warming up. The question is, if you are a city-bred child or a city-fied child or an urban kid, how do you spend the time when you get to walk leisurely down the path? Now, what are all the things you happen to see? On the other hand, now we can always predict. Now, already we have started living in a kind of a concrete jungle, and wherever you turn, to whichever side you turn, whichever direction you throw your eyes to, you find only buildings and buildings and buildings. And if you are a person who is passionate about nature, maybe you will have a couple of plants in your house, but even that is a kind of a luxury now. Everybody goes out, and everybody, not all the members of the family have got time to take care of plants, fine, leave alone pets. But if you happen to be a child who lives in a village, aren't you blessed? You are a blessed kid. In what way? You can afford to enjoy the treats of nature, the bounty of nature, the richness of nature, how she tries to please you, how she tries to help through such beautiful scenery, help you to maintain your mental equilibrium. She's a kind of a stress buster, nature. Now, she's so cool, in your language, if I could use your words, she's so cool, she's so compact, she's so nice that every time you look at her, she always gives you some kind of a solace, she comforts you. And this is what happens with William Wordsworth also. His time was very, very turbulent. That was a time when French Revolution took place, and William Wordsworth did something wonderful along with his friend Samuel Taylor Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge. Now, these two people gave us something which we have to be eternally thankful to them for. Now, what could that be? A beautiful collection of poems, contribution made by these two people. Coleridge took to the ballads, that is narrative poems, story poems, and of course his friend William Wordsworth, he took to the lyrical aspect of it. Now, even if you listen to film songs, right, you will have information regarding who wrote the song as such. You have the word lyric, right? Initially, lyrics were songs sung to the accompaniment of a musical instrument called lyre, L-Y-R-E. Fine. Then it became lyric. Now we use the word lyric for any kind of emotional rendering put to music, any kind of emotional poem put to music, and it becomes a song. It's a lyric. Wordsworth took to the lyrical aspect of it, the subjective part of it, the emotional part of it, the personal aspect of poetry, and his friend Samuel Taylor Coleridge took to the narrative aspect of it, the story aspect of it. Thus came lyrical ballads, which the book is still considered a milestone in English literature. Now, what did it do? It should have done something that we remember it so deeply. What did it do? That's a question. Fine. So long till the arrival of Wordsworth. No, he called himself and the other poets who belonged to that school of poetry, they are called the Romantics. Now, teacher would have told you, she would have made a mention, or he would have made a mention of Wordsworth being a nature poet. Fine. And you would have easily thought that he wrote about nature, so he is called a nature poet. No. It was his clarion cry. He became the high priest of a particular school of poetry, particular school of philosophy of writing poetry. He said, back to nature, return to nature. Come, let us go back to nature. But why should he say so? Till his arrival, till the arrival of the Romantics, till the arrival of the high priest of Romantic movement, that is William Wordsworth, literature was confined to the four walls of a library. Literature was not meant for an ordinary man. It was not written in ordinary language. It never treated the lives of ordinary people as something befitting, suitable to be treated as themes for writing poetry or something on it for literature. It was certainly not a suitable theme. An ordinary man was not heroic enough that he or his life has to be made a mention of in literature. So long that was the condition, and it was meant only for the learned few. That's why I said literature was confined to the shelves of lives, not only because of the language but also because of the theme and the treatment of the theme. It was more of a craft, it was more of a skill than a talent, something natural, something spontaneous. Fine. When Wordsworth came into the picture, he thought literature has to be liberated from the shelves of libraries and taken to the roads, taken to the ordinary man. How can you take literature to the ordinary man if you are not going to write about his emotions, his pains, his pangs, his pleasures? What excites him, what saddens him, what makes him think philosophically? He may be a leech gatherer, the girl may be a solitary reaper, but even in their life they have something very sublime, they have something which is very unique, which is something very special, worthy of becoming the themes of poetry. So Wordsworth started writing beautiful poems in ordinary language about ordinary people, about ordinary things which look absolutely ordinary, had or still has something extraordinary about it. And that's why he said, come, let us go back to nature. Nature does not have the difference between the rich and the poor. Nature does not differentiate between the haves and the have-nots. She does not consider your wealth to be wealth at all. For her, wealth is something different. Whatever you consider to be pretty, she would like to look into the inner self of a person, the mind of a person, and make the person glow with inner beauty. That's why Wordsworth said, nature is just not nature to me. She is my guide, she is my guardian, and she is also a philosopher. She is a guide because she could tell me the right path, and she is a guardian because whenever I falter in my path, whenever I go away from the right path, she is like a teacher. She corrects me and she draws me back to the ethical ways of life. And she is a philosopher. She could tell me or she could reveal to my mental eye the great truths of life, the value of life, how life should be lived. And thus he wrote his very brilliant compilation of lots of poems. You call it the Prelude. And again, that is another milestone. So what do we understand? The Romantic poets brought literature to the hands of an ordinary person. Thanks a lot. Even in Tamil literature, when you talk about the Vanambadi group of poets, they also had the same kind of mindset, bringing literature to an ordinary person. And that's exactly what Bharatiyar did. You know, in the Romantics also, you have the senior Romantic and the later Romantics. Senior Romantic, you have Wordsworth, and you have another poem written by William Blake for your listening comprehension. Fine. And Coleridge is a senior Romantic. Byron happens to be one. And when you talk about the later Romantics, you have your Shelley, you have your Keats, and Shelley again believed that revolutionary thoughts could be put in ordinary language so that even an ordinary man can become a revolutionary. And that's exactly what Bharatiyar also thought, and that's why Bharatiyar called himself Shelley Dasan, because he was so passionate about the philosophy held high by Shelley. Now we come back to our poem. Enough and more has been given about the author, more than what the book said. I have forgotten something else. You have Coleridge and Wordsworth. They are called the Lake Poets, the Lake District of England, and you call them the Lake Poets. The poets who brought the name of the little district in which they were born to the map of literature. Even now, when you talk about the Lake Poets, these two people stand as pioneers and high priests of English poetry. We should be very thankful. When you go through the poem, you will understand how beautifully the rhyme and rhythm and the words fall in their right place, give such a pleasing feeling for your ears, how they create a wonderful mental picture that you are being transported from the room where you are in, or your classroom, or your little chamber in your own family, right? You're transported from there with ease and grace, and you're taken along with the poet to another beautiful spot where the poet wants you to see what he sees. And how do we see this? As literature happens to throw open various windows of a room, various windows of your thinking pattern, you for the first time look at nature as she has to be looked at, listen to nature as she has to be listened to, and you understand nature as she has to be understood. Brilliant poem that has been prescribed to you, just of 6 stanzas. Very easy the lines are, and it is lines written in early spring. Maybe we live in a tropical country where the line of demarcation for the change of weather is not so sharp and clear. No, sometimes due to global warming you get unexpected rains, you get unexpected heat waves. You are not able to predict, you are totally dependent on weather forecast. But I personally feel that in England still, in the United Kingdoms, still there is a line of demarcation, a very sharp, specific line of demarcation. When you talk about the 4 seasons they have, you have a spring, and before the onset of spring, you find an early spring, that is something nature uses to announce, a kind of a flyer thrown at your doorstep for you to give a glimpse, telling that I am arriving with my wonderful season, that is spring. Spring very gradually moves on to summer, and from summer you have the most colorful, beautiful, magical season called autumn. Now autumn is a season you have to choose to visit these countries, because even that is United Kingdom, because it happens to be a kind of a color display. You find nature to be a great painter, painting not just the flowers but every leaf with vibrant, lively colors. So they become orange, they become yellow. You don't even understand. Sometimes you feel as if the whole tree is ablaze, it's caught in fire. Such a treat for eyes. After having enjoyed the treat, it slowly, gradually moves on to a kind of incubation period where nature goes to a deep slumber. She takes rest, and completely everything is covered with snow. And after the snow season, after the winter, something springs back to life, and that's why you call it spring, onset of spring. This particular poem is on the lines written in early spring. So the poet, as we can expect of Wordsworth, is amidst nature, and it's early spring. Everything, nature completely has already made an announcement that she is coming with the best, a bouquet in her hand. The birds are there, the flowers are there, the leaves are there, everything looks so beautiful. That's exactly how the poem starts. Whenever I am here, when I start thinking of my thoughts, when I deeply probe into my thoughts, when I'm engrossed in something given by nature, when I am contemplating over such sublime thoughts offered to be my nature, all of a sudden a touch of sadness comes to my mind. I'm not able to think happily. A touch of sadness is always there, and I lament over something. You may ask me, what could be the reason? You are in a most beautiful place, you are surrounded by nature's bounty. What could cause this kind of grief to you? You may ask. Even I ask the same question. What has man made of man? Now that's exactly how the first stanza, the last line of the first stanza, throws a question. You are a 16 plus, fine. You may wonder, am I old enough to think like this? Fine, you are old enough. If you do not start thinking this way, what are you to do with yourself? What are you to do with the life that has been given to you by nature? How are you going to continue with this life? How are you going to conclude the life? What would you like to be remembered as after you have gone past, right? After you have completed living successfully according to your definition, how would you like the people to think of you, remember you? Now you have to start asking this question, because you're moving into adulthood. You can't continue as an adolescent for a long time. Your teenage is coming to a close, and this is the most appropriate time to give you Wordsworth, who laments over that everything about nature is so beautiful. Everything about nature has got a purpose. It has got a message. It has got a duty to perform. But what has man made of man? That is the question you get in the first stanza. When you move on to the second stanza, he draws your attention to the beautiful flowers how they have bloomed. It can be a primrose, it can be a periwinkle upon a twig. Look at them. What are they doing? They spread their fragrance, they spread their happiness. They tell you that they have bloomed so that they can become a feast for your eyes, and they do what they have been asked to do. But what about man? Every time he draws your attention, what do the flowers do? They do their duty, and one flower does not compare itself with another flower. Each flower does what it has been assigned to do, what it has to perform. It does it without any fail, without grumbling, without complaint, and it doesn't fail in your duty. So he gives you a primrose and a periwinkle as few examples, asks you to turn around and see nature in her bounty, in her richness. Then he moves on to the next one. He talks about, what about the little insects? How are they? Be it a butterfly or a beetle, or what about the birds? All these, the birds, everything, they all produce noise, they all sing a song so that it would add happiness to your ears. What do the birds do? Did somebody teach them? No. Everything looks as if they have got a calendar inbuilt in their mind, and they perform their duty without fail. You turn around, see a butterfly, you turn around, see a beetle, you turn around and you hear the melodious song of a bird. All these people, if I can call them that way, all these children of nature do what they have to do. But what have you done? How have you added to the happiness of the existing world? What have you given back to the society from where you drew so much, from where we should keep drawing so much? He moves on to the next stanza where he talks about a twig. A twig is not a branch, something smaller than a branch. You find twigs, right? So he asks you this question. These twigs would have become barren, would have become leafless, sometimes even lifeless during winter. But the moment spring arrives, that is at the onset of spring, early spring, what do you find? All these come back to life. They turn around, they come back to life. They can't afford to go on slumber, they can't go on to keep sleeping. The moment winter leaves, spring gives a call and they all respond to it. Even a twig has got its life and shoots out fresh, young, colorful leaves, and so that you can have delight, you can have a feast for your eyes. But what have you done? What have you done? As a human being, how have we contributed to the existing happiness of life? Don't we have a duty to be performed? But what do? We spread hatred, we spread dislike, we spread malice. So we have become pollutants ourselves. We have been created by nature. Nature has taught us to do something. But instead of doing what we have been asked to do, we do things which we should not be doing. And it's not just an individual. Collectively, the human race has been doing something, so that we have become the only pollutants of the otherwise beautiful nature. So the last stanza is once again drawing your attention to what you have to do. You need not go to a school where a teacher teaches you what you should do. Innately, inherently, you have been blessed with goodness, like all other creations of nature. Nobody teaches a bird how to be a bird. Nobody teaches a flower how to bloom and spread its fragrance. Nobody teaches a twig to shoot out fresh new leaves to show that it is alive when spring arrives. But we have to be taught how to be humane, how to be kind, how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic, so that we do not become the only pollutants who completely contaminate the ambience around. So he closes with, he says, how else am I to speak? You want me not to lament? Fine, I do not want to lament, but I have to lament plainly because you compel me to lament. The poem concludes with again the same question, a very strong question, asking human race. Where does he do it? He is amidst nature. He's enjoying the beauty of nature, but he says, I am not able to enjoy nature completely. I am not able to appreciate the beauty of nature completely because I look at human being as a part of, as another creation of nature, when the rest of the creations can understand why they have been created, why man misunderstands why he has been created. He says, how else am I to be? I have to lament. And what do I lament about? I lament about what has man made of man. Fine. When you conclude the poem, I ask you again the same question. It's absolutely pertinent. It's something very important. It's not a question which is just asked, which goes unanswered. Now, most often such questions are called rhetorical questions. Now, he is used to it. His solitary reaper also has it. And he comes upon a lonely girl in Scotland. Fine. When he makes a visit to Scotland with his sister Dorothy, he comes upon a lonely girl, who cuts and binds the grain. She is busy with the harvest and she sings in a melancholic strain. She sings a song very melodiously in a tongue which he does not understand. The poet does not understand the language, but her song could tell him that it should be some foregone, there is some about some battle, about some loss, about some personal tragedy, because the tune happens to be one of melancholy, one of sorrow, one of sadness. At that particular context, he asks another rhetorical question. He asks you, will nobody tell me what she sings? Will no one tell me what she sings? Is there anybody out there, my readers, who read my poem? Can you please tell me what could be the subject of her song? What could be the theme of her song? What is she singing on or about? All I understand, it's beautiful, it's very melodious. I will hear it even after I leave the place. Even after I leave the place, she may not be visible anymore. It would be reverberating in my ears. In my mental ears, I can hear it ringing. In the same way, you find the poet lamenting over man's failure, how man deliberately, consciously fails in performing his duty of keeping himself and his society happy like the other creations of world. So as I told you, this is just not a rhetorical question, a question that goes unanswered. We say, oh, everybody knows an answer for this question. No. Take the question personally. Take the question as if Wordsworth has asked you this question. What is your duty? What is your role? Have you designed your destiny? You have been dreaming of your destiny, but dream does not take you anywhere. Have you designed it? When you design your dream, you know where you will be, at what time you will be there, and how you will be there. So it's just not the end, it's also the means. So take all your values, the values that have been given by your family, by your teachers, by your classroom, your personal values, the values which you have learned from your grandparents, from great uncles and aunts, from great leaders about whom you have read in their biography or autobiography. Out of your own experience, you are 16 plus, you are old enough, as I tell you, you are old enough, and you draw heavily from all these. Start working on your destiny. Have the chisel, have the hammer. You try to bring out the best in you. Remove what is not in you, which is certainly not you. Remove all those. Don't wait for the society, experience and time to tinker, time to chisel you. You chisel yourself. Be at the right place, at the right time, with the right attitude and with the right kind of values. Then you would have by then given an answer to William Wordsworth, the nature poet, who asks you, looking right at your face, into your eyes, he asks you a question, what has man made of man? Maybe once you occupy a great position and you become a job provider, you become somebody who is contributing much for the growth of the society, for the family and the country. Maybe you're on that particular date, when you call yourself a successful person or somebody comes to interview you, you can turn around and tell, when I was doing my 11th standard, I came upon a poem. A poem was prescribed in the syllabus. It was by William Wordsworth, and it looked seemingly very simple, but it asked me one question. It asked me, what is man made of man? It looked as if it asked me that question. What are you going to do? How are you going to pay back to the society and family and the country from where you draw so much? So this is my answer. Fine. So thank you ever so much. As I told you, the text is followed by comprehension questions. You have vocabulary and you have to appreciate the poem. You have a parallel poem also. William Blake, his Very beautiful poem, and for your listening comprehension. And you have yet another poem, Summer Sun, that again talks you about talks to you about not the spring but the summer. So you can also further go on with all the 4 seasons. You have got the spring by Wordsworth. Of course, you have got a parallel poem which talks about how sweet the summer sun is. Move on to autumn. You have lots and lots of poems. You can even look at a photograph, a beautiful photograph of autumn season, or you can read Ode to Autumn. With the help of your teacher, you can understand it better. And don't miss winter either, so that you will understand, like seasons nature provides. You are now, you know where you are? You are in the early spring of your life. So when you move to your college, fine, you will be in the spring of your life. When you get your job, when you are in your 30s and 40s, you happen to be in the summer of your life. When you move on to 50 or 60, when you move like me to 60 plus, you will automatically be touching the autumn of your life. But when you come to the winter of your life, when you grow old, really old, 70 plus, turn around and then tell, the winter of my life is such and such. It is this way, plainly because my early spring was so beautiful. Right? Thank you. Thanks a lot for listening. Thank you.